Hey, everybody.
Hello.
Doing well, and happy Good Friday to everybody. And I hope you're staying safe and doing what you need to do to protect yourself and your family. Appreciate you stopping by and talking to us today. And talking to us is really kind of what we want to do with Ethan today. This really is about you. I'll show you a few things, but I really would like to try and help you come up with some story ideas, or maybe answer some questions about how you create a story or where the ideas come from, et cetera, et cetera. So this is pretty much your 45 minutes. So Ethan, I'll let you start off. And by the way, if you see me looking off camera, I have the camera here so that you can see all of this. But unfortunately, for me to be able to see what's going on, I have to look up over here. So I hope that's not too disconcerting.
No, it's not. Hey, everybody. It's the lunchtime AMA on Friday afternoons we're trying to do. Today, I'm joined by our regular CC panelist, Rolando Santos. Hi, Rolando. We're having a pretty great week here.
Doing, guys?
Pretty great week here at CC. We just came off the Larry Wilmore mega lecture, which I was not expecting to be a mega lecture, but surprisingly enough, it was awesome. We got some office talk there at the end, and a lot of magic. You liked it?
Oh my God, that was amazing. First of all, he is an amazing magician. The stuff that he passed on is absolutely pure gold that you're really not going to find in any books, which is typical for conjurer community, of course. And on a personal note, I was stunned to realize that 25 years ago, he and I had crossed paths when I worked for Fox, and he was working for Fox in Living Color. And that, looking back on it, those were great times. I mean, those sessions, you talk about magicians who have fun sessions. When those guys get together at 2, 3 in the morning to create this stuff, oh man, it is just amazing. Just an amazing experience. So it was good memories for me all the way around.
Right on. Well, I mean, I did want to open up, and we are going to talk about magic because that's what brings us all together. But, you know, since coming to work here with CC with my brother, you know, you meet people in this magic setting and you don't really know what they do in their outside world, what is going on. And I've met 3 pretty impressive titles of people in their day jobs that I knew before I knew their day jobs. One morning, I was on the phone trying to get panic to a person, and then he said he was the head of the USO. And I said,
Cool.
My brain froze for a second. He goes, well, have you heard of the USO? And I'm thinking, what USO? There's only one that I know of. I said, you mean Bob Hope USO or something like that? And he said, yeah. So that was pretty amazing. I looked him up, and he was the head of the USO. And I've met the head guitar technician for Carlos Santana. But then,
oh my God.
Yeah. That was a big deal for me. I tried not to fanboy over him a little bit too much.
Aaron and Adam must have been so jealous.
They introduced me to him, you know, and I actually met him at a summit. But
wow.
One more guy has a really impressive title, and a lot of people might not know, and all of our members might not know that you were actually in the news business. And I went online. I just got a little bit of a resume, and I won't read the whole thing, but it looks like in 1993 you joined CNN, starting out as an executive producer and later news director for CNN Español. You're the president of CNN Español and CNN Español Radio, an executive vice president and general manager of HLN, a senior vice president, I think that's what that means, for affiliate relations for CNN International. And 40 years ago, it looks like you retired from your role as CEO of CNN in Chile. Is all that right?
All of that is correct. I've had a wonderful career both in front and behind a career. The first 16 years of my career before I got to CNN was actually in front. I was a reporter in places like San Francisco, San Antonio, Salt Lake City. And then I went into management and launched 4 CNN networks around the world, and I've run 5, including Headline News. And my last stint was a lot of fun when I lived in Chile, setting that network up and getting it going. So,
and you know, all that time you're a magician this whole time while you're doing that?
Yeah, actually, once I left being on air, part of the reason I went to become a magician was I missed the part about being a reporter and and being center stage and doing those things. And I was the executive producer of Fox in Los Angeles, KTTV. And actually I was the assistant news director. The executive producer there, a woman by the name of Carol Brashears, introduced me to Ed Thomas, who's since passed away, from the Society of American Magicians. And they both took me to the Magic Castle, where I got to see Johnny Thompson and Pam perform the Thompsoniac. And then afterwards, they took me backstage and I spent time with them. And about a week later, Carol made arrangements so that Johnny would send me a copy of the Mark Wilson course in magic as a gift. And I kind of took off from there. But originally, it's kind of interesting for me. Originally, I wasn't into performing magic. I liked the history of it. I liked the concept of creating stories and things like that. And what happened was I was launching my second network, this one in Spain. And I was having dinner one night and I was reading a book by Roberto Giobbi in Spanish called Giobbi Light. At that time, they hadn't been produced in the United States. And I had a deck of cards with me. And a woman and her three daughters, elderly woman and her three daughters, was at a table on one side of me, and she dropped her cane. So I got up and picked up and gave her the cane. And she said, "Are you a magician?" And I said, "No." And she kind of insisted, and I did 3 or 4 tricks for her that all worked. And I was happy because at that point I didn't perform for anybody. I was so happy. So I finished my dinner, I was leaving. And one of the daughters came up to me and she said, "Thank you." And I said, "Oh, don't worry about it. You know, it's really great because I'd never performed in front of anybody." And she said, "No, you don't understand. My mother is dying. This is her favorite restaurant. And now I can remember her laughing and having a good time."
That's great.
Boom.
Yeah.
The next day, I call Juan Tamariz and I call Rafael Benatar. They don't know me from Adam. Okay. I'm nobody in the magic world. I said, "This is who I am. I'm launching a network here in Spain. This happened to me last night. I want to be a magician." So they agreed to have coffee with me. And I did my 1 or 2 little things, and I look back and it's like, it's so embarrassing how little I knew. And I don't know what they saw. They must have taken pity on me because they took me under their wing. And then from then I took off, right? Obviously. But truly, it was because they must have seen something that was definitely not there in the actual performance of what they were doing or what I was doing. And I'm forever grateful, particularly to Rafael, because he really introduced me to Jose Carroll and all of the Spanish school, and it was great because that's my natural area is telling stories. And a little bit later on in the broadcast here, we'll tell you a little bit about how to do that and how to learn to do that, and the misnomer of what is bizarre magic and storytelling magic. I'm putting that out there as a hook so you know what we're going to talk about, but I don't want to interrupt the flow of what Ethan's got going. So anyway, that's my story in magic. I recognize that it could make a difference at a very, very powerful level for a lot of people. And that's why I'm in it.
Well, it does. It actually leads to one of my questions about, you know, what you did calling them up takes a lot of what my people would call chutzpah, which is confidence. Do you know what I mean? You can have an experience like that, but pardon me, very few people are going to have the chutzpah, the nerve to call up Rafael Benatar and Juan Tamariz, and just ask them to go and get something to eat and talk to them. So, I mean,
well, so here's the deal. In my particular case, I've been shot at. I've been stalked by a satanic cult. I've crashed in a helicopter in San Francisco Bay. I've met kings and queens. I've been targeted by serial killers. When it's all said and done, and this plays into my philosophy of magic, if you don't put yourself out there and if you don't do things that are important to you, then they're just not going to get done. What was the worst that was going to happen? Rafael and them would have looked at me, laughed at me, blown me off, and it would have been done for them. Not for me, because I was going to be a magician. And in fact, Rafael said that to me years later. He said, the one thing I got really clear from that coffee time with you was you were going to do this whether we helped you or not. And that's just the way it is. So when I go and I perform magic, I want to be good and I want to perform and I don't want to make any mistakes. But when it's all said and done, what's the worst that's going to happen? It's not like one of those bullets is actually going to hit me when I was a reporter. That's not going to happen when you're out on stage. Could be embarrassing. Okay. I've embarrassed myself in front of 100 million people. I dropped an F-bomb one day in a live shot in front of, a couple of million people, or more, actually, about 90 million people. You just go out there and you do your thing and you do it as best as you can. I'm probably clicking this too much. I'm sorry.
No.
And you don't worry about the failure. You accept that failure is part of it, and then you learn why, and you go on.
It's like a thing I've heard comics
to life and magic.
I've just heard comics talk about that a great deal about bombing, and then it hurts for like a couple days, but then you just go back and do it. But it seems like you have some extra skill with that, with the journalism experience and all the things you've mentioned.
Well, let's be honest. When I do a story as a journalist, somebody is going to be unhappy with me.
Okay.
Either the right or the left. And if I'm really lucky, they're both unhappy with me, because that means that I've done the story right down the middle, and this side is ticked off and this side is ticked off. So I live in a perpetual state of that. Does it hurt? Yeah, of course. I have an ego. Someone calls you some of the names that I've been called, which, I wouldn't repeat in front of anyone here. It hurts. Or it hurts when I blow a trick, particularly in front of the CC group, my extended family. But that's not going to stop me from trying, and it's not going to stop me from doing things. Just like today, everything you're going to hear today in terms of the stories that we tell as we do this is all adlib. And I did that on purpose, just to keep myself sharp. I'm not giving you any polished performances on anything. I'm just going to adlib so I can show you how you work your way through an adlib in a story and create a storyline. I could have come up with 3 very polished routines and it would have looked great. You know what? That's not going to help you learn that failure is a good thing. Constant failure isn't. And I recognize that if you fail, you may not have a job on the next go around. So you want as minimal a failure as possible. But failure is always there because you can't control the audience no matter what you do or how much you think you can. You can't control if 2 cards stick or if 1 card gets out of line when you're not paying attention, or you have a brain freeze. It's going to happen. So rather than worry about when is it going to happen, and give it energy, you just say, hey, it happens. And most of the time, if you just keep right on going, most people either won't notice it, or because everything else is so good, that gets forgotten. In television, there's an adage that when you're doing a live shot, people clearly remember the first 15 seconds and the last 10 seconds. So if you get smoothly into the live shot and you get smoothly out of the live shot, if you screw it up and you stumble in the middle of it, people don't tend to remember that. And that's the way it is in magic.
Right on. Listen, we're going to start with the magic in a second. I can't pass up one thing to ask you, and I don't want to dwell on it, but it is a current event question, and it has to do with your experience. And it just came to me, and I would be stupid. I would hate myself if I didn't ask you this. You retired 4 years ago. Okay?
Yeah.
And then 4 years ago, what we're going through now, stay at home, quarantine is happening. Is there any way, in a truncated way, because I know everybody wants to see stuff and I do too, that you can comment on the difference in what news might have been doing then to what they're doing now for this particular situation? Or is that just, is that a whole other meeting?
No. Part of the reason that I retired was I saw the path that journalism was taking, and it wasn't the journalism that I was brought up with. I was brought up with a kind of journalism where my job is to tell you information about a given story. What you do with that information, I don't care. It sounds cold, but I really don't care. My job and my profession is to say, this is the positive, this is the negative, And then you as the audience, through your moral filter, your personal filter, your religious filter, your cultural filter, all of those things let you form an opinion. My job is to give you the information as best I can and as truthfully as I can. And then you go from it. And we've evolved now to a place where you can't have a dissenting opinion without instantly becoming someone's enemy. You cannot have a conversation with most people and say, well, I think this, this, and this. Well, I don't think that, and you're an idiot. And it goes right there. It goes right to it rather than, why would he think that? Okay, maybe he has a point. Maybe he doesn't. No, I'm not going to agree with her. And then you go on. Right now, if you don't agree with something, you're in one camp or the other, and that's the way it will always be for life. And is the media to blame for some of this? Yes, the media is to blame for some of this. There's no question about that. But also, so is the political atmosphere that we're in right now. My big thing right now is we're worrying too much about how this happened rather than dealing with now, how are we going to deal with it? What are we going to do? And then we can examine the back.
Right.
But right now, there's a lot of, okay, he did this, he didn't do that, they didn't do that, he did this, he did that. The president doesn't allow certain people to appear on certain networks. All of those things just add to an environment that would drive me crazy if I were still on the front lines right now.
Well, I'm glad you answered that. And, you know, I have to agree. Driving you crazy. I try not to watch it sometimes. Okay. So let me ask you a question and get this magic off to a start, okay? My brother, Aaron Fisher, I asked him about you, and he said you're one of the better presenters of magic that he's ever seen. So that's a question of confidence and,
Wow.
you know, talking to the audience. And so maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
That's a huge compliment. I love your brother and I respect him a lot. That says a lot for me, and I thank him for that. I think the best thing to do is just let's go into something real quick, and then I'll show you. And now keep in mind that I'm ad-libbing here, okay?
Okay.
And I'll show you the tricks to how you ad-lib. So
Right.
let's assume that we're in an audience situation. I'm looking around and I'm going, I need someone. Oh, I need you. You've got a beard.
Thank you.
I just read in Psychology Today that men with beards are particularly wanted by women who are looking for partners. Women think that beards are sexy, and women who want to get married think that men with beards make great fathers. Right? That's some study that they just finished in Australia. You can look it up. You can Google it if you want. Now, men with beards traditionally also have a lot of virility, have a lot of wisdom and intuition. So I want to test your intuition. Okay, so even if you wouldn't mind stepping up, I'm going to ask you to do a couple of things here, okay?
Okay.
We're going to play with just 6 cards. It's actually 12 pieces, and they all match, okay? Now, if you were here, I would ask you to mix these as much as you want. All right? So you've mixed them all, and now, you want me to cut, or would you like to cut?
You can cut. You want me to
Okay,
cut?
so I'm going to cut random number. It could be him. Now,
Okay.
ideally, what you would do, quite frankly, is you put a man and a woman on either side going through.
Okay.
But we're doing it this way because we're ad-libbing. So you have this, and I want you to count the number of pieces that you have, okay?
1, 2, 3,
2, 4, and 5.
5. Okay.
Okay, just to be sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay?
Okay.
Now, mix the cards as much as you want, and you can. You can mix them, cut them as many times as you want. Okay? Now, I'm going to show you the cards one at a time. I'm going to look down so I don't see, and I want you to remember the card at your number. Okay?
Okay.
You ready?
Yep. Hold on. Okay.
Okay?
I think so.
Now, in my case, there should be, watch this not work, right? I'm going to do the same thing for me. I'm going to look at what my number would be. Okay. Now, I'm going to ask you to go through, in this particular case, you're going to pick yours and I'm going to pick mine. Okay? Now, for the first time, tell me what your card is.
I'm embarrassed to say it was either the 7 or the 9 of hearts. 'Cause I couldn't see her.
Well, I've got the King of Clubs.
Okay. Okay.
So let's figure out what went wrong here. Okay, so the idea here is, unless I don't have enough, it may be that I don't have these particular cards, and I need 12 cards. Okay, so let me put them all in order for you here. Let's see here so that it works out. Okay, so we have the king and the king, the queen and the queen, that's 2. Let's see, where's the 8s? 3, 4. Yeah, that's what happened. I was off by 1 card because I'm missing one of these cards. That figures, doesn't it? All right, so we're going to go through it again.
Okay.
And 1, 2, 3, 5, and I'm going to just tear a card here. The way it works is it's actually self-working. Okay. And you have 6 cards. You just love it when a trick goes bad. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Now, they truly can be in any order. It doesn't really matter. It's a mathematical principle.
Okay.
So they can cut as many times as they want. They can mix the cards. They can do whatever they want. Now, when they make that one cut, what you're looking for is the number of cards that you have versus the number of cards that I have. Now, you know the total number is 12.
Yeah.
So I cut it. These will be your cards. Okay, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So your number is going to be 7. My number should be 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay? Put the 2 cards together and you mix them. Okay? So your number is 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7.
Okay.
So that's the Queen of Diamonds.
Yep.
All right. You finish dealing the pack. Take the last card, scoop it up, and now my 5th card should be the other Queen of Diamonds. 1, 2, 3, 4. And
Okay.
there it is. Queen of Diamonds.
Nice.
All right?
Yep.
Finish dealing the pack out, and then you ask them to both come together. And they pull the 2 cards out, and it shows.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this was my fault. I'm missing half a card because I've been practicing, and I guess I must have mislaid it. So I apologize.
But there's a full
from
a full
this-
presentation of it in the back room, just so you know.
No, there isn't, but I can, create a video and put it in there.
Okay. I thought there was.
Did I miss something? What do you mean? What are you asking?
This particular trick, what's it called? Or is it called anything?
6-card coincidence.
Okay, well, I don't know what I'm talking about.
Okay, so this is a great example of, I got the jinx because Aaron thinks I'm such a great storyteller. So what I'm doing here with you is I've talked about the fact that, and I've just randomly picked you, right? You've got the beard, you've got this. The part about the beard is correct. If you were to look it up on Google, all of those things would be right. So what I'm trying to set up here is a 1-2 coincidence thing. And this really works when there's a woman and a man. But we're going to assume for a second that that worked. Okay?
Okay.
Now I'm going to go through and I'm going to go to a second level and say, obviously you have intuition. Okay? So let's see here. Let me see if I can What do I want here? Yeah. Do I want? No. Yeah, I think this will work. All right. This is going to be your card.
Okay.
I want you to concentrate on it.
Okay.
5 of hearts, okay? I'm not supposed to know what it is, but for the discussion it is, right?
Okay.
So you have this ability to influence people. It's just innate. People with beards have that ability. So I want you to concentrate on that card. And I'm going to close my eyes and I want you to focus on me and I want you to send me that card.
Beard vibes.
So what you have is a, right, red 5, right?
Yeah.
Now, I'd ask the spectator to take a bunch of cards, flip them over and put them down. Oh, that's interesting. A black
Okay.
5.
I'm broken, I guess.
And then cut below that and cut it again. Now you were sending a black 5 to me. We already know that because I have a black 5. Let's see, you were sending a red 5. We came up with a black 5. I'm partial to blacks. I like spades and clubs. And that's why now you have the 5 of clubs. Okay, so that's just one or two things that are totally impromptu. You don't really need anything for any of these. This, by the way, was just luck. Turned out to be a black 5 that I cut to. But what you do is you look at the top card of the deck and you pick whatever number it is. So in this particular case, it happened to be a black 5. I went through and I looked for another 5 to give you. I chose the red one, and you're sending that vibe to me. And then you take the deck, cut it. It's the cut deeper force. Cut it again, bring it to the top, and they match. And so you're playing around the fact that you have a beard, that you have these abilities. Now, if you really want to make it interesting, let me see if I can, let me get another, hang on a second here. There's another red 5. You put the 2 red 5s on top of the deck, keep them there, and you go through the whole spiel about, I'm testing to see how good you are, whether you're intuitive, whether you can get people and send positive vibes to them. And you have Ethan, in this case, cut and cut deeper. And then you go through and that's his card. You put this pack back down. You go through the fact that he needs to concentrate as he sees his card. He freely cut to that card. You have no idea what it is. And now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to cut and I'm going to cut. I've chosen freely where to cut. I've turned the deck upside down, cut it in. I've made all the choices. And when it's all said and done, we have the 2 red 5s.
All because of my positive
that can be
vibes.
done all because of your positive vibes.
That's right.
And it just goes back to the fact that you're a bearded person. Now, that's an impromptu you can do with any deck whenever. It doesn't even have to be a complete deck, but you've got to be able to get 2 pairs up at the top. Now, the interesting thing about this is you can go in any direction you want. In this particular case, I was ad-libbing, which was the point of the beginning of the exercise, around Ethan. And the ad-libbing that happens is within a framework. I don't have any idea who I'm going to see in a particular restaurant or a particular setting or whatever, but I'm going to zero in on someone and I'm going to choose something about that person that I'm going to build this aura around. And the rest is just talking about it.
And it all has to be like
Do we have questions on Facebook?
Nothing yet. I'll ask a couple feeds here. But my question is, it has to be like a physical attribute at the beginning because you don't really know anything about the person. So it's beard, it's glasses, is that kind of thing?
it can be anything. It can be what the person is wearing, the ring that they're wearing, the way they're sitting. Anything that you can build around, a story around, is what you're going to work with. And so people will often ask me, how do you do that? And the answer is, I practice. I had to practice. That's how I do a live shot. When I'm in the middle of a live shot and I'm getting shot at, or I'm in the middle of the largest earthquake in modern history, and I'm reporting live and the buildings are coming down around me, I'm in essence falling back on this instinctive ability to be able to describe what's happening around me. And the way I used to teach my reporters and the way I learned it is real simple. What you do is, when you're driving, back when you can drive again, or even around the house, you stop. Let's say you're driving and you stop at a stop sign. You look at the corner and you describe out loud what you see. Oh, there's a lady with a baby carriage. The baby carriage is red. She's got a beautiful scarf on. Oh, look at that purse. And you describe for about 20 seconds what you see. And what happens after a while is it becomes second nature to describe those things. And your eye begins to see more. Actually, that's not true. Your eye sees a lot more than your mind tells you until you give your mind permission to tell you. Okay? For example, most people would notice the beard and most people would notice the glasses. Few people would notice that you were wearing a light blue t-shirt. So I may zero in on the light blue t-shirt, right?
Right.
It's in there. You just have to learn to recall it. And as you're describing these things, people will go, oh, and you're not doing anything except doing the obvious. Now, there are a few other things that come into play. That's a second layer of this that we'll get into. But the first layer of this is very simply being able to walk into a place and in 20 seconds, describe something interesting. I had an interesting final in speech class when I was at Texas A&M University. The professor would have us talk extemporaneously about something, and he would choose it. You had no idea, and you had to do it for 3 minutes. And I got a doorknob, right? Now, I was lucky because the doorknobs at A&M in the old main building where I had the Star of Texas on the handle, right? So I sat there and I said, oh my goodness, look at that. The Star of Texas. The history of Texas is this, and the other. It ties the institution. It's a bronze door, bronze being it's a brass doorknob. Brass is an interesting subject because it allows people to feel comfortable. The touch of it can be warm or cold, but there is something about the feel of touching that knob and feeling the star in your palm. It's almost unconscious. It's like a piece of Texas A&M history is being translated into, and I'm just talking off the top of my head.
3.5 minutes.
But it was such a compelling, for 3.5 minutes, on a doorknob.
Yeah.
And so those are the kinds of things that you learn to do to be able to tell a story in broadcasting or even in magic. I really am sorry that I missed that one piece of the card, because that effect, I've done it. Pepe Carroll from Spain, the late Pepe Carroll, taught me that 25 years ago.
Well, the reason why
I first got to know them.
The reason why I asked why it was in the back room is because I guess you use your paper clips to hold your cards, and I saw you using those when you did love cards, and that's probably what I was thinking of.
Yeah. No, that was just circumstance.
Okay.
And I'm really sorry it didn't turn out, because that particular trick is incredibly powerful. If you have a man and a woman here and they're a couple, you can talk about coincidence. You can talk about you can take them down the path of, do you all have a mutual dream that you share?
Right.
They say yes. Is it something you can tell us about?
We do have a question from Richie.
Okay, hang on a second. Let me finish the story then.
Sorry, go ahead.
So you're sitting there and you're telling the story, and you're saying, well, yes, and then we want to buy a house. Well, let's see if the cards of coincidence are with you, right? These 6 cards are random cards. But historically, fate sides with those who have a lot of belief in what they do. If we can get 2 pieces to match, then there's a pretty good chance that you'll be able to accomplish your goal. So let's go through this. And you go through that routine of the 6 cards that I just showed you, except you remember to have all the cards there. Right. And at the very end, when they both pull up the queen or the ace or whatever it is, and they match, it's powerful because they've done everything. It doesn't translate well when I'm doing it. When 2 people are doing it, because really the only part that I handle the cards is when I count. Everything else they've shuffled, and at the very end, they put the 2 pieces of the cards together and pull them up. I have no idea what the cards are, quite frankly. And pull them up, it blows people away. So that's an example of taking a very simple trick and dressing it in such a way that it becomes a powerful, emotional, impactful piece. Go ahead. What was the question?
Well, I have a question really quick because maybe I missed it at the beginning. Do you bring them out already cut, or do you cut them in front of the audience?
No, I cut them. They're already cut. And the whole idea is that these are coincidence cards, cards of fate. Sometimes I start off with the fact that, I'm a magician and I have all kinds of decks of cards. And so, when they get worn, I cut them in half and I create what is called a cards of fate.
Right.
And what are they? Well, there was a gypsy woman that I interviewed one time for a story who told me that cards are very, very powerful. And when things are torn apart and separated and they come back together, that's the most powerful kind of a connection that any 2 people can have. And the way to test that is through cards of fate. Right on. That's the basic storyline. That's the go-to storyline that I use without even, right? That's before I know what this person is, whether I'm ad-libbing, but that's my reason for having these cards. Plus, it's really fast. You sit there and you're showing, it's only 6 cards. And I'm going to do something amazing. I'm going to see how strong your connection is. And I go through that, and they're holding the cards. They're doing all the work. And then at the very end, they match. And it's all over in about 2 minutes. So it's a great opener. And you're not pulling out a deck of cards.
Richie has a question, but I have another question too about this trick, and then I'll ask his question. Okay. Is there anything to, you for cutting up the cards that each half of every card is from a different deck? But, the same card.
I've never,
you know what I mean?
No, because because part of this is you want them, at one point you can show the front of the cards if you really want to and show that they are just matching cards.
Okay.
Yeah, but you know what, Richie? The whole idea about experimenting is exactly that. I'm going to do the Woody Aragon Love Me Not trick in a little bit, and I'm going to show you a version that I came up with that was just pure experimentation that as I've used it, it blows people away. And it blows people away because I can use it as kind of an anniversary kind of a card situation. But we'll get to that in a moment. Your basic answer is, I don't know if that would be better, stronger, or not. But you should play with it and see if it works.
That was my question. I do have one from Richie. Richie says, do you have a target goal for the length of an effect with your presentations?
No.
Okay.
Not in my head. I know from television experience that anything longer than 1:45, I'm going to lose an audience unless I really have them engaged. So somewhere around 2 minutes is probably what I want to do. Now, how does that play into a set of 20? What you're doing is you're breaking it up into seconds. So let me give you an example and see if I remember this fact right. I call it, when I do speeches, I talk about the Goldfish Factor. And the Goldfish Factor is that a goldfish has an attention span of 12 seconds, right? The human person nowadays has an attention span of 9 seconds. So you can actually keep the attention span of a goldfish longer than you can a person.
I'm sorry, what was the last thing you said?
9 seconds, you can actually keep the attention of a goldfish longer than the attention of a person.
Okay.
Right. And so everything in television is about every 9 seconds, there's a change of an image. There's a word emphasis. There is a re-engagement. And so I just kind of use that as a hook. Every 9 seconds, I'm giving you something that's going to reconnect you with what I'm doing, either because of what I'm doing here or because of what I'm doing with verbiage.
Okay. So our friend Joe Babcock has a comment, which is really appropriate because I think we want to talk about something he brought up earlier this week, right? He said it's such an appropriate storyline time for when so many of us are separated from friends and family. I couldn't agree more. But yeah, you were talking about love cards earlier.
Right. Actually, Joe, that is wonderful. You know what? I hadn't thought about that. The separation there, when you're away from family members and stuff like that, would be a good storyline to work with. Let me get these things and make sure that I have these things in the right order as we're talking about. 9 and...
Look, I can do that too. See?
There's the Jack and 7.
Chad Engelbert says the coin key deck. I don't know what that means.
The coin key deck?
Yeah. He just said that. I don't know what that means.
Okay,
and Larry Moore says hello. Hi, Larry.
Hey, Larry. So, Joe, the Woody Aragon trick. Okay, so let's go through this real quickly so that we have it. The Woody Aragon trick is based on the fact that I use the 4-card version. So let's talk about the 4-card versus the 6-card. The 6-card version gives you more ability to play with your audience because it looks a little bit more impossible. The problem is you have that much more room for error as you're asking them and giving them instructions. So I go with the 4-card routine. And so basically what you're going to do is the 4th card, you take 2 and you're going to have to get rid of at least 2. You put 1 in the middle. All right. In this particular case, that's what we're going to do. You get rid of another 1. So in essence, you have to get rid of 3 or move 3 around. The 4th card and the bottom card will be the piece that'll come together. All right, so then you go through the sequence of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He talks about the 7 days of the week, et cetera, and then from there it works, right? Now, think about what happened if you're in a situation like I found myself in. Let me figure out if I have the right sequence here. Yeah, okay. So what we're going to do is exactly that. Let's start this way, and then I'll show you something interesting. What do you want to do? You want to take the first 2 cards. You want to keep them? You want to get rid of them? I didn't hear you.
Get rid of them.
Get rid of them, okay?
Yeah.
Got a next one. You want to keep it? You want to get rid of it?
Keep it.
Keep it, okay? We're going to put it somewhere in the middle. And this we're going to use as a receipt for later, okay? Then you go through, you know what? You've been together and you stay together, and being married is kind of interesting because you're there every day of the week, you know, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. But when it's all said and done, the bond of love is very interesting because through the ups and downs, you love me not. Sometimes you love me and other times you don't love me. Sometimes I love you and other times I don't love you. Sometimes I love you and sometimes I don't. But when it's all said and done, we're together.
Right.
That's the Woody Aragon trick, right?
I like that, yeah.
Now, what's interesting is all these other cards are blank.
Okay.
So you show that not only is their love strong, but imagine how strong it is that the only 2 possible cards that they could have gotten would have been this one. Okay. Now I happen to use a joker here because it's what I had handy.
Or their love is so strong
So
that
now
it erased all the other cards.
Well, you go that way too if you want to go that way. So I got caught in a situation one time where I was at a friend's party, wasn't performing, and someone threw a deck and said, it's their anniversary, can you do something? So I took their deck and I cut the deck in half, and I took the 8 of hearts, and I'm sorry, I took the 2 of hearts and I made an inverted 8, which is the infinity symbol, and I had them sign it. Okay. Then I went through the routine and they ended up with the 2 halves. Okay. And it got me to thinking about, okay, so what happens if we were to take the same signed card, okay, in this case, let's assume it's a 2 of hearts with an infinity signal, their name on the top, their name on the bottom, they tear it in half, and I put it on the bottom of this stack. Okay. Now, it's important it goes on the bottom. If you go through the save one, save another, say, what do you want to do with this? You keep it here, but you don't do a receipt card. You just sit there and you go 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, the 7 days of the week, right? Then it's love me not, love me not, love me not, love me not. They each come up with the half of the infinity symbol and the 2 of hearts. And then you say, you know, it's very interesting. You went through all of those gyrations, separately came up with different decisions. And of all the cards, only this one, the infinity card that shows that you should be together, is the one that you both chose.
Nice. I like that.
So again, we're in a situation where we're dealing with not 2 people. If I were doing this in public, I would have the card, 2 sets of cards already torn. Okay. 2 sets of cards already torn, except for the 2 of hearts. I take out the 2 of hearts. I would do the figure 8, have them sign on top and on the bottom, tear that in half, and then take 1 packet of the cards and just get it to the bottom. Take the second packet and get the other piece to the bottom. And then they're both doing the sequence, with the exception of you never hand out the receipt card. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Even?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
then at the very end, when they pull up the 2 cards, it's amazing. But then when you take all of the cards from both piles and you say, look, everything else is blank,
That's
leaves
great.
them
Yeah.
with their mouth open.
Nice. Now, to me, that
So if Joe, I'm not seeing the Facebook feed. So does that help you with anything? And does that give you an idea when I told you to use the blank cards? Can you type something up and see what your thoughts are?
and while we're waiting for that,
What do you want to talk about?
yeah. While we're waiting for that, I wanted to ask you a question about. It seems like a very complicated thing with lots of moves until you remember them. How does one? I mean, how long have you been doing that trick?
Oh my God, 5 years.
5 years.
And through trial and error, I just don't do the 6 card one. I'm going to be honest with you. Either I screw it up or they screw it up. I've never had much luck with the 6 card routine. And once I found these 2 little options, especially the blank face one, that just, there's no reason to go there for me. Okay. Some people have, bigger cojones than I do and want to go through it with 6. They're welcome to it. But why am I going to increase the chances of failure? I mean, we go back to the first trick that we talked about. That failed simply because I forgot 1 piece. I must have practiced it a dozen times last night to make sure I had it down right.
Right.
And somehow I missed putting 1 piece back, and the whole thing fell apart.
But at the end of the day, you're not.
Those are the kinds of things that happen.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, you're not being tracked by a satanic cult, or crashing in a helicopter, or being hunted by a serial killer,
Right.
or you're in an earthquake. So it's not a big deal.
Right.
But as far as like the complicated of it, what do you do to keep yourself technically up to date on it if you're foibling anyway? I know you mentioned some videos that you made.
Okay. So all of us fall into, I want to make sure to keep an eye and see if Joe says anything.
I'm
okay?
keeping an eye.
We all fall into the trap of, God, I remembered all this stuff. What am I going to do with it? And I can't remember how to do it. And Joe was the one, this is a great example. Joe Babcock went to the back room and he was working on this and he goes, Rolando, it doesn't work for me and it doesn't work for me. Well, you know what? I hadn't done that effect in probably a year. So what I do is I call them personal video tutorials. And that is, I take an effect. Now this is separate from recording myself doing a presentation. I take an effect, learn how to do it, and then I record myself teaching myself how to do it in my words, as opposed to the instructions that you may get. And that way I have a video recording of me doing it in my own words so that it works. And then I just put that on my computer. I have a hard drive, external hard drive. And so I went through and I said, oh, I'm going to look up Woody Aragon, and it popped up. And that was done, I think, 2.5 years ago when I recorded that. So very quickly I was able to say, oh, yeah, I remember now. It's this, this, and this. And in this particular case, I was able to post it on Facebook so that you guys could see it. So I do that quite a bit because it's the only way I'm going to remember all this stuff. You have to remember, I mean, I'm the longest tenured reviewer for the Linking Ring at close to 23 years now. You can imagine all of the stuff that I've seen and gone through and reviewed. And for me, reviewing is not a matter of just, oh, I think it's good. I try and actually do some of the stuff that comes in. In fact, try to do as much of the stuff that's come in as possible. And so I've only got so much brain capacity. And so it's much easier to do that. So all you do, and those are not for anybody to view. I mean, I shared it, but those are not for anyone to view. It's just for me to have a record of how to do it so I can very quickly go back and say, hey, let's do this.
Right on. Richie had another question, and I wanted you to show us your books, and then I had one question. He says, do you try to keep your sets relative to one another in one show so they lie in together? If not, how do you transition from one set to another to keep the audience at attention?
Well, there are two things that happen. First of all, I try and stay with a theme for a series of sets that I'm doing. Now, if you're going to do walk around, it's different. You just do one or two things and you're gone and this and the other. But if it's a little bit different such situation, so you try and come up with a theme or a series of effects that go in one direction or the other. My persona is that of a journalist who's traveled the world and seen things, and I'm going to share some things with you. And so I may pick a couple of coincidences like intuition here. I may choose one where I talk about psychic powers, and I may choose one where I'm just saying, hey, you know what? One time, I was out in Las Vegas, and this is the reason that I no longer gamble, and then that. So it's three different themes, but it keeps me going. But one of the things you have to learn in your routining of a script, as well as of your segment, is you've got to give the audience a chance to absorb and breathe, to relax, so that they can come back into you. And that just is a matter of, I can actually look at a script after reviewing scripts for 40 years and say, this is the dead spot, right? But with time, you're doing this with an audience. And the creation process varies. Sometimes it's the story that jumps out at you. Sometimes it's the effect and the story just comes to you. Other times you have a story and you're trying to put an effect to it. And the only way to get around that is playing with it. Now, Sean, who can't be with us today because he has an appointment, he asked me he said, Rolando, what were the question? Make sure that, okay. What are the top 3 things to do right now if I were a magician to help me better, make scripts better? And I'd say the first thing you do is cut them down. Almost every script, including my own, I have editors that edit me too, are always too long and they don't make sense. Secondly, look for connections that reflect you and your personality and what you do or your persona, because those are easier to buy than from an audience perspective, that if they're going cross purposes with your persona. And three, you make sure that you're looking for emotional hooks. What are the things that capture your attention? So either it's happiness, sadness, fear, anger, awe, wonder, or curiosity. And so you're developing stories and you're developing images that would do that. Now, one of the biggest fallacies about storytelling magic is, first of all, it has to be bizarre and, you know, the devil and satanic and all that. You know, there is a branch of that from about 20 years ago that's how it started. But it's really evolved into storytelling magic. And there's a group of us that are slowly moving it in that direction. And I think the best example of that is if you look at Larry's ambitious card trick from the other night, that's a perfect example of really the story was, oh, this is your card. By being your card, it's magical. And it bounces up, it goes down, it goes up, it comes here, it comes there. And oh, by the way, it appears over here. And it's because you gave it a magical entry. That's all he said. He did not write a word for word verbatim script. He gave you a plausible something. This is your magic card. You infused it with energy. And look what it can do. Boom, 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 boom. And there it is.
And if anyone's capable of writing a word for word script, it's him, right?
Well, yeah, okay, absolutely. And with great comedic punchlines, right? I can't do comedy to save my soul. So that's one thing. Yeah, the other thing that Sean asked me was, what are they doing wrong? And the first thing is you're memorizing your script, word for word. Now, you have to memorize your script, but unless you're an actor like David Parr, who if you see his script's never varying. Most of us can't memorize an entire script, keep it in our head, and also be doing the motions. Most people, when they memorize something, if they forget a word, because it's memorized, they have to go back to pick up what they said in order to get the thread again. And that's just a psychological thing. That's why memorization is not a good idea. Because if you forget this piece, you can't get to the rest over here. So what you do is you memorize your script, and if you have that ability, you know, God was good to you.
Right.
But I prefer to memorize a script with key points that I want to talk about, and then make sure I hit the key points. And that also allows me to weave in the moment of where I am. The script may call for the fact that instead of it being a bearded man, I am just talking about extrasensory perception and coincidence. And I suddenly see him and I say, oh, you know what? I read the story about bearded people today or last night. I thought to myself, oh, you know what? I'm going to use that tomorrow. I have a basic story and I can do the story without it, but I'm always looking for that in the moment hook that makes it real to the audience. The other thing is what we talked about a moment ago. People often confuse a script with this word-heavy thing, when in fact, a script just needs to get you from point A to point B. Go back and talk, and let's see the Larry thing. I'm not going to repeat myself there.
More of an outline.
Yeah, well, no. My point is that sometimes a story is 5 words. I mean, I got an Emmy nomination for a story that I did about a man who was hand building sleighs in Utah, okay? I said 5 words. John Doe spends his afternoon in his barn making sleighs, and the rest was all music. And we watched him, and it was 2 minutes of music and him moving it, turning it, da-da-da-da-da. Then you see the finished sleigh at the very end. It was more camera work than anything else. So stories are not defined by the number of words. A story is whether or not you've engaged your audience.
Joe did get back to us with a
And
question.
let me finish third thought here, okay?
Okay, sorry about that.
Most people also fail when they don't consider the venue or the circumstances that they're working under. Sometimes you go in with a story idea that you just love and it doesn't work in a particular venue because of the audience, the number of people that are there, and they don't know how to vamp, right? So being wedded to a particular line or storyline or group of words hems you in such a circumstance. In order to engage your audience, you've got to judge what's going on in the moment and be prepared to move. And where most people fail is, no, this is the way the trick is. This is the way it's got to go. And I've got to follow it with this trick because that's the way I set it up. If this doesn't work and you don't think the second one is, then why are you going to follow it up with something that's not going to work? So don't box yourself in. You've got to be relaxed. They don't know what you're going to do next. You do. And they don't have a clue if you've just killed an entire effect because the audience didn't respond like it should. Maybe they're too drunk. Maybe it's just the wrong audience, the wrong table.
Well, I think it's just performance. You have to be fast on your feet, right? You need to be able to switch it up based on circumstance.
No, not fast on your feet. You've got to actually be relaxed, and you've got to have confidence in the fact that whatever comes, you can adjust to it. There's a lot of difference. Fast on your feet is you're being shot at, you're talking, you're trying to be coherent, and you're also dodging bullets.
Again, our perception is completely different on what we do.
Fast on your feet. Right, but the image is fast on your feet is I got to be thinking, oh my God, what am I going to say next? No, the whole concept is just the opposite. I am so relaxed. I'm having so much fun with this group. What am I going to do next? There's a total difference in my attitude, my body language. I'm relaxed. I'm swinging my arms back and forth. You're just talking.
So Joe came back with us about, I guess he's talking about love cards again. He goes, how feasible do you think it would be to do the version with no receipt card, leaving each person with half of the same card completely hands off?
You know what? That's a good question. And there's only one way to find out. You and I should go out and test it sometime. And if it doesn't work, it's okay because we're testing material out. I wouldn't go and, if it were a really heavy duty gig that you were doing, but I would slowly work it in little bits and pieces, coffee shop or wherever you can do to see if that works, whether it's feasible or not. I think it would be feasible, quite frankly. I mean, the reality is it's better than the other effect in the sense that the blank version or the no version, as long as you have that bottom card, whatever the bottom card is, it's the one that's going to be forced. You can say, what do I do with the first three cards? I mean, what people don't understand that first three cards. You want to keep both of them? You want to keep all three of them? I'm going to keep two. All right, get two, get rid of two, put the next one down. How many days of the week? Oh, you know what? You're wearing that light blue, right?
Yeah.
That light blue is interesting. Blue is usually associated with the number 7. So let's talk about the days of the week. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then you go on from there, right? So I think it's probably doable where it's almost hands-on. And it's certainly easier than the one that Woody has. It may not be as powerful. I don't know. The reaction I got when all the other cards are blank is just amazing. I mean, it's amazing when the two come together, but then when you flip them all over and you realize there was no other combination that could have worked, people are just sitting there going like, oh my God.
Or Joe, I have a really good idea. There's a member mastermind in 5 days. Come and show us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you
go.
Well, no, actually that wouldn't work because it needs to go out and it needs to be field tested with friends or whatever in a workshop or, if you're jamming with someone, but virtually it's very difficult to do that effect. It loses so much. All three of the effects that I've shown today are very difficult to do digitally because the real magic of the moment is the interaction that's going on between the people that you're working with. The very first trick that I showed, I would never have handled the cards other than to to show them to each other. Would have gone back and forth and said, you pick them up, you mix them up, you decide who's going to do this, who's going to do the other. That's the power of the effect.
Right.
Right?
All right, man. Well, I mean, I've had a lot of fun. I do. I want to thank you for coming on. Like I said, you know, I'm trying to do these every Friday to give some extra thing for people to do while they're stuck inside. It's been a great help. I've had a bunch of panel members on. I do have one last question that goes back to your career before this to wrap it up. I was doing a YouTube deep dive on you, and I watched a part of a class that you gave to a bunch of journalists, and it was in Spanish. I was trying to read the subtitles as best I could, and I picked this out. You told journalists that journalists were the rebels responsible for the truth. Is that right? Did I get that right?
It's true.
And I love that. I wanted to thank you for that, because that's what, in my mind, I want journalists to be. My question is there anything so poetic and truthful that you can say about performing magicians?
My job as a magician is to suspend belief for a brief moment of time so that the worries and the other things that are cluttering someone's mind go away, like that woman in Spain.
Yeah.
For that 10 minutes, that elderly lady forgot about her cancer, forgot she was going to die, forgot about the fact that it was probably the last time she was going to have dinner with her daughters at her favorite restaurant. And they laughed and had a good time. Had they not told me that, I would never have known that that was a farewell dinner.
Right.
And that's what magic is all about.
Man,
I didn't say it very elegantly.
Well,
but in essence,
I put you on the spot, but that's okay. Thank you so much, everybody. Thanks for watching. Everyone's Joe says thanks. Richie says thanks. Larry says thanks. So, you know, thanks, man. I mean, that's all I can say.
My pleasure. You know where to get me. All you got to do is Facebook me or PM me, and I'll help you with whatever I can. Because you know what? One of the things about Aaron and Conjuror community is this thing about we're all family. We're all helping one another. And I know every time I do something, even when I screw it up like today, I get better and I learn something. And you guys teach me as much as I hope I'm teaching you in all your conversations with me. So thank all of you for being part of the community.
Thank you.
See you guys later.
And I'll let Aaron know. I'll let Aaron's mom know you said that about him.